Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We've reached the game preview of the second preseason game against the Dallas Cowboys, visiting Lumen Field in Seattle. We're going to talk about all of the injury updates that we've got heading into this game, as well as some practice reports and players we want to watch heading into that second game. It's probably a game we're going to see a few more starters get a few more snaps, but not a lot. It seems like the team is comfortable with where they're at, and really taking a hard look at some of the fringy guys wanting to make this roster, Keith.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting things going on in terms of like where we've got some injuries, where guys that we thought were about to make the teams, and now there's a guy, chance for them to get pushed back down to the depth chart where I think most people expected when camp started. They've got all sorts of stuff going on. This is going to be a really interesting week as far as like kind of getting an idea of where these camp battles are and where they're likely to end up, because there's only one more game after this.
Absolutely. I think before we get started, we need to mention Alex Collins on this show. When we recorded last time, I think that news was just breaking, and didn't get a chance to mention it on our previous recording. And it's been a few days now since he passed away in a motorcycle accident in South Florida, and just wanted to say we just want to honor that. And he's a good player, very good person by all accounts. He's just a pleasure to have on the team and around teammates. Selected in the 5th round in 2016 by Seattle, went on to play several different seasons with a couple different teams. And anyway, that's just really sad news.
Yeah, I never got a great chance in Seattle to be a feature back, but I mean that's just the time period in which he was here. Went on to the Ravens, where he had over 1,000 yards in part of his season. Good guy, big guy. For his size, I think the story that most people will remember is, he's a pretty big guy even for a running back, but the videos and stuff of him doing Irish step dancing with his sister, people, that kind of stands out. And then I was just thinking of that when I was reading about the fact that he had passed, and I was just thinking about his sister and in those videos and all those kind of things. And it's just really tragic, and hate to see that kind of stuff happen. He was 28, so really young guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just very, very difficult. Everyone's chiming in and saying what kind of a great guy he was, and it's a big loss. That's really terrible. Okay, I've got a laundry list of things to update everyone on as far as players let go, players signed, and some injury things. I'll just kind of run through that. If you want to stop me anytime, feel free to. Seahawks signed nose tackle Matthew Godel. I think it's Godel. Maybe it's Gotel. Previously signed with the team as an undrafted free agent last year. Tacoma native, graduated from Lakes High School. Appeared in a couple preseason games last year. Then they signed cornerback Montre Braswell. He had been with the team in the off-season program here this last June and was cut. He's back now. And then wide receiver Justin Marshall. Marshall 6'2", 227, went undrafted out of the University of Buffalo. He spent a little bit of the spring with the Atlanta Falcons before signing with Seattle. 58 receptions, 719 yards in his senior season with 8 touchdowns. There with Buffalo, named the MVP of the Camellia Bowl after recording 11 catches for 127 yards and a score over Georgia Southern. So just another guy, to kind of make it through camp. We've seen some injuries there. on a couple players, and they just want to take a look, it seems like. To make room on the 90-man, the Seahawks waived Wayne Tualapapa, the running back, tight end Noah Grindorf, who you inadvertently mentioned last week or last show as a tackle, potentially. Now he's not even on the team, so the Keith Myers curse is there.
There it is.
Sure. And they waived Rashawn Henry with an injury designation. So if he clears waivers, he could come back to the team potentially. As far as this preseason game is concerned, and I've got some injury stuff going on, and we'll get to those as we talk about players. This preseason game is the game you kind of want to watch. The second game, they used to have 4 preseason games. Now it's down to 3. That last game is now turned into kind of get everyone on the field and give them their last chance. But this is the game where you're going to see some starters. If starters are going to play at all in the preseason, this is going to be it. I would imagine Geno Smith gets a little bit of a run in this game. Not sure exactly what the snap count would be, but I would imagine it's going to be at least 2 series, if not 4, and then have Drew Lock come in to finish the game out for sure. And Holton Allers, at the tail end kind of a thing. But you're going to see some significant snaps by our starting offensive line, I think, to get some rhythm going there. Our wide receivers are going to take a few snaps. On the defensive side, you're going to see, everyone in and out, I think, in the first half, and we'll just kind of monitor that and see how that goes. And it should be a fun game. I mean, again, last week we didn't talk much about the opponent, the Minnesota Vikings, in the game, because it just really doesn't matter. We're lining up this week against Dallas. Dallas comes in with a pretty decent roster as far as a roster that's filled with a ton of veterans. So it's an odder roster, more established. And they're not so dependent as Seattle's roster is, I think, on rookies or second-year players to come in and make an immediate impact. They've got a roster that's already ready to go. You could argue in the past that it's been an underperforming roster, at least in the last 20 years. And it hasn't really changed much. Everyone talks about Dallas in the preseason. Oh, yeah, they're going to be a top 5 team, top 10 team. In the NFL, top 5 at least in the NFC, and it just never seems to materialize. And but again, the talk is there that this team's going to rise up and be a top 3 or 4 team. And yeah,
I like their roster. I think that
do you really?
In a lot of years, I think that's just placating a large fan base and knowing that it drives ratings. But in the last couple of years, they've done a good job of developing the roster and making some really smart moves. I mean, obviously not entirely, because there were some issues last offseason where they screwed up a couple players and whatever. But overall, though, I like the roster. I think they've got some talent and depth all over the place, and that tends to lead to good things as long as people stay healthy. They finally got out from underneath, the awful Ezekiel Elliott contract and used that money elsewhere. And I think they're going to be a good team this year. I don't know if it's...
Speaking of Elliott, he signed with New England just the other day.
Yeah.
Finally.
I don't know. From what we've seen the last couple of years from him, I'm not sure that moves the needle other than by name recognition.
Yeah, I thought so. That he lost some motivation there or something, just kind of interesting. Okay, so a couple players back in pad this week. Tariq Young is back. Cody Thompson. That's going to be important for those guys, considering the push that they're getting from some of the undrafted guys coming up onto the roster. Joey Blount's still out with a little back thing, although I understand he's coming along pretty good. Others also out. D. Eskridge, Cade Johnson, Kenny McIntosh, although he's getting close to coming back. Cameron Young has got a little elbow thing going on, and John Radigan. Ken Walker was back in practice on Wednesday doing some walkthroughs, but no team drills. According to Pete Carroll, he's going to slow walk that thing. Jordan Brooks as well, activated off the PUP list. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him later as far as the impact that's going to have on the roster. He's going through walkthroughs as well. they're going to definitely ease him back. He sounds like he's going to be ready for game 1, but unlikely to see time, I think, in the preseason. And then they've got that opportunity too, to do that with Devin Bush emerging as well. Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason to rush him back when you've got some depth there, especially since it's the team expected Bush to be back, but I think if you look at the last couple of years of Bush in Pittsburgh, I don't think there was a lot of reason to be optimistic with him until recently, that preseason game and the mock game. But since he has kind of emerged and as back, they can low walk the getting Brooks back, because there's no reason to push him, there's no reason to rush him. But this is a guy that I think is going to be key to this defense if they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs. So they need him back, but they need him back for the season, not for in and out, because he's constantly getting re-injured or having issues and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
it's a remarkable recovery, Keith. He had the injury on January 1st and the surgery on the 17th or 19th of January after swelling went down, and then began the rehab process and is back off the pup. He's cleared his physical. He's been working hard on getting himself back into shape. That's just an amazing thing. I mean,
that's
that recovery time.
Recovery.
Yeah, so they don't want to push that for sure. And like you said, they've got the time with Devin Bush there. He can integrate and work back in. It'll be interesting to me. And that's one of the players I really want to watch in this preseason game is Devin Bush, because I think he's got now limited opportunity for me to come in and really kind of define where he's going to fit in this defense going forward, because I think there's going to be limited snaps, because I do see the team being in the nickel or dime packages about 70% of the time this season. Yeah. And the player identified as being off the field when that happens is probably your second off the ball linebacker. Unless you're just in run coverage mode at some point in the game, which means Devin Bush is going to be off the field. They're going to have to make a decision on Jordan Brooks and Wagner, and Wagner's never spent hardly any snaps in his entire career off the field. So there's going to be some interesting choices there to be made, and I know the Seahawks want to put the best players on the field, regardless of position. And it'll be very interesting to see how they juggle that. It's all good news for me, though, Keith. Having Jordan Brooks back on this roster, and ahead of time, they hinted that it would be ready. As far as Pete Carroll in the offseason here, that he was ahead of schedule and he's looking good and blah, 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 blah. But you take that with a grain of salt. And now that he's back, the impact that has on this roster, to me, just makes this that much better.
Yeah, because that was
in a position to go deeper in the playoffs, really.
Yeah, that was a weakness in the middle there. I mean, yeah, you've got Bobby Wagner, but who else? You've got John Radigan, and then an injured Vi Jones, and so if
and an unknown really in Devin Bush. I mean,
So
you were kind of hard on him, I'm going to say, in the offseason, just kind of based on his history. And I thought, well, I mean, the Seahawks signed him for a reason. There's a chance that he's going to improve, but there was no guarantees for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that looked great as a rookie, got hurt, missed most of the season, and hasn't been the same since he came back. And then his 4-year rookie deal is done, and he signs with Seattle. And there hasn't been anything since his injury to suggest that he is going to be a good player. So yeah, I wasn't saying I was hard on him. I was just skeptical. I knew that there was a chance that I knew there was, a new team, a new environment, and those things can help. It can really affect people's mental state, which can matter, especially when you're recovering from an injury. But he didn't look quick or fast or anything in his tape from last year. So I was skeptical. You're right. I was. Basically, he was signed as a guy to kind of hold down the fort until Brooks returned, and we hoped that would be less rather than more as far as time. And now it looks like he is actually back and showing some of that quickness and stuff back. We've seen it in the first preseason game and in the mock game.
And by all accounts, he's having an outstanding training camp.
Yeah, and then Brooks is apparently going to be back sooner too. So what we thought was a weakness on this roster, that second inside linebacker spot, is now suddenly not, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. We still need to talk about the defensive tackle spot. I'm going to do that in a little bit. We can chime in on that for sure, but that does solve a huge potential hole on the defense, having 3 competent veteran players at that key position. I think that that really helps with defending the run in this defense on first and second down for sure. All right, players to watch, Keith. Give me one player that you want to see in this game.
I am really interested in what's going on at safety. Kobe Bryant versus Reed. Unfortunately, I think Jonathan Sutherland's not going to play because he's been banged up the last couple of days, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, right at the end of practice yesterday.
He's missing practice today. I just really wanted to see that kind of trio and see how that's going to break down, because I don't think all those guys can make the roster.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some tail end guys, to be completely honest, in this game, because Julian Love got a little injured yesterday, got landed on by a player in the end zone on the last play of practice. And then you mentioned Jonathan Sutherland. It sounds like he's going to be held out. We don't know that for sure. We don't know the severity of any injury that he's got, but I think Jonathan Sutherland's already been playing himself onto this roster. If you take a look at some of the notes that are coming out of camp from some of the reporters that are on the field there, it sounds like they're confident in his ability to play him all over the place. He was in that starting nickel spot while Devin Witherspoon has been out for 7 consecutive practices. Kobe Bryant is now back there as the starting nickel right now. So that's showing the diversity of Kobe Bryant. But Sutherland was in that spot, as well as playing in a couple of different spots closer to the line of scrimmage as a strong safety, defending the run and so forth. So it sounds like he might be I'm not going to say a lock for the roster, but he's probably 1, 2, or 3 undrafted rookie free agents that have the potential to make this roster.
Oh yeah. And just the amount of time, the amount of one-on-one coaching that he's been getting from Pete Carroll sure makes him look like a guy that is going to make it, because Pete's not going to invest that much time into a fringy guy that's not going to make the team. You know what I mean? And so
I got a quote. He's really aggressive, very instinctive, and had some really great hits in the preseason opener on special teams and defense, Carroll said. He played good football for us. He's played a couple different spots. He's playing some nickel and some safety. He's been very versatile so far. I really like him because he's been a very instinctual football player, and he's got a knack for going for it. So, and that's a quote from Pete. I'm not sure what the question was to prompt that response, but
it doesn't really matter that.
It doesn't matter if he's going to talk about a player in those kind of glowing terms. The fact that he spent some time individually with him, coaching him up on some different, footwork and handwork and so forth, that's significant, really. So good for him. The same can be said for Matt. Is it Matt Bobo? Jake Bobo. Sorry.
Jake Bobo.
Jake Bobo isn't playing. No, I mentioned a player without dropping a name in the last show that he might be compared to. And I was thinking of like Jazz Ferguson and Kason Williams, the players that had outstanding preseasons at wide receiver for Seattle that were fringy but didn't make the roster. They were cut right out of the gate, even after great performances. But Jake Bobo's different.
Yeah, well, with those guys, they had good preseason games and did that, but they did that in the third and fourth quarter when they're, guys that were out there are guys that aren't going to make NFL teams. Jake Bobo was starting. He's out there with the ones. So yeah, of course, it's because there's a bunch of guys above him that aren't playing. But that was true for Case and Williams too, right? There were guys that were out, but it still didn't matter. He came in at the end of games and did well against fourth string guys. Jake Bobo in there against with starters, with the ones, and making plays.
It also matters what goes on in practice as well. And Jake Bobo's doing it in practice as well against some of our superior defensive backs that we've got on this team, and a very deep defensive back room. And, a guy that Steve Smith, wide receiver, was in camp a couple days ago, and he gave an interview, and he mentioned Jake Bobo by name, said, this guy is a underdog, a workhorse, a guy that's under the radar, potentially popping out for this team. And he said he compared him to Joe Jurevicius as far as the comp. Thought that he was same body type, sort of speed, but had the mental toughness, which he singled out as an attribute. And then Pete also said yesterday in his news conference that his favorite play Bobo made at practice Wednesday was on special teams. So Pete's taken notice that Bobo is also on the special teams unit. And that's going to be his ticket. He's not probably going to get a lot of playing time, although he could supersede Derek Young and obviously Eskridge to earn that fourth wide receiver spot and get, potentially an opportunity to have 17 to 25 receptions this season out of that fourth spot. I think that's his best hope, but certainly on the practice squad.
Yeah. He's going to be around Seattle.
He's another guy too that they're playing all over the place and spending extra time with him in drills and so forth.
Yeah, because he's earned it.
Yeah. And
they're trying to get an undrafted guy ready to be on the roster. I mean, that's the only reason why you put in all that extra time with him. And so, yeah, it's, I mean, there aren't a lot of these undrafted guys that appear to be in position to make the roster. And, Sutherland, Bobo, those are the guys that appear to, those are the guys that I think are going to make it. And there isn't, like I said, there isn't really a lot of, despite the fact of having one of the largest undrafted classes ever. I think the largest undrafted class ever in Seattle, other than the first year the team was in existence. Very few guys are gonna actually make this roster, which is kind of weird.
It's true. Another guy, depending on what happens with Cody Thompson and Cade Johnson, that has an opportunity is Matt Landers.
Yeah,
Matt Landers having an outstanding camp, wide receiver, big guy, 6'3", 6'4", with 4.37 speed, I believe. In his 40, had 3 touchdown catches in Wednesday's practice, and Drew Lock threw all 3. So that's significant, really. I mean, and he looked good doing it against.
That's such speed for that size. That combination of size and speed. It's hard to find a lot of guys that can do that. Now, the Seahawks happen to have, one of the best in the game with DK Metcalf, but behind him, you've got Derek Young, who hasn't done anything in this, preseason and training camp because of injury. Now, granted, he has been back for one practice, so we'll see.
And they know they've got him, so I don't think he's going.
Yeah. It really felt early on in camp that they had put together a play package for him, because they were moving him over. They lined him up at fullback. They lined him up at H-back. He was at wide receiver. They were doing, jet sweeps. Like they had a bunch of stuff designed around this guy. And so I don't think he's going anywhere either. But
isn't it crazy? It's crazy to me. I'll just stop you for half a second. It's crazy to me that they've created this sort of package for that position. Both Derek Young and Eskridge, I believe, was going to also have an opportunity to be in that conversation in those same sort of plays. Both players have been injured and out, and they're not able to implement that part of the playbook. That's got to be a little frustrating.
Yeah, but they're very different guys.
They are very different, but they could run this out of the same sets, I think, except for the blocking stuff.
Yeah,
Derek Young,
because Derek Young is big, and Eskridge is tiny, and so they wanted to move Eskridge around, get him the ball in space, and let him use some of his unique talents, but the kid just can't stay healthy. Derek Young also has been hurt, and that is kind of weird, but I think it's more of Eskridge was a second-round pick. This team, despite the fact that he hasn't done much and played much, this team had at one point really high hopes for him, and the fact that they would develop up, a group of plays around him and his skills isn't. It's not surprising, right? He was a second-round pick. Derek Young was an undrafted free agent. Or no, he was a 7th round pick. That's right. But still, he was a 7th round pick who didn't make the roster out of camp last year, had 2 catches last year, and they still seem to develop a group of plays around him, which means they felt they had something there that maybe didn't show up on the field last year, but that they believe is going to arrive. Now, hopefully, all this time he's missed in training camp doesn't,
I think
cause
I think it's going to be fine. From what I'm hearing out of the coaches, his spot is secure, and it's just a matter of getting him back in, getting him ready for week one, because they do expect him to build from where he left off last year.
Imagine the stress that you can put on an opposing defense with DK, Derek Young, Matt Landers, all that are big guys that can go deep. And then you've got like Jackson Smith and Jigma and Tyler Lockett who can get open at will. And having them underneath when your entire secondary is bailing, just trying to stay behind the big guys that have all that speed. Like this offense can really make defensive coordinators sweat.
The real competition after Derek Young is going to be for that 5th and 6th spot. Now, we don't know for sure if they're going to carry 6 wide receivers. Often they do. With this much talent in the room, it might behoove them to do that.
Especially without a huge group at running back.
Right. So you're looking at Cody Thompson, Cade Johnson versus Jake Bobo and Matt Landers. You might put Aesop Winston into that conversation as well. So you've got 5 guys vying for 2 spots, at least in my book. And these games are going to be really important. I mean, they're doing it in practice, but you got to do it in a game. And so these preseason games are meaningful for those types of players for sure. Okay. Kobe Bryant. I kind of want to see Kobe Bryant in this game. He's been getting a lot of time at a lot of different spots. Didn't have a great game against Minnesota, but they trust him enough to move him around all over the place. And now with Witherspoon out, as I mentioned earlier, 7 straight practices. Bryant has moved back into the starting nickel spot after Sutherland has now gone down with an injury. Don't know how long that's going to be. But they trust Bryant to be moved all over the place, including switching positions again this year into a safety spot. So I kind of want to see how he's developing. Levi Bell and Tariq Smith are another couple players I want to see. Levi Bell, I think, has earned an opportunity to kind of get more playing time. USFL kind of player coming in and trying to figure out a way. It's going to have to be on special teams. Same with Tariq Smith. In fact, Pete Carroll singled Tariq Smith out when asked about him as a player. He's going to have to step up on special teams, which means, according to Pete, He's not really playing for time as the outside linebacker role right now. He's playing for a spot on this roster, and he's going to have to do it with special teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, special teams really matter. I know that it's one of those things that, especially when we talk about guys like, we're talking about wide receivers and linebackers and, that kind of stuff. And people are like, can they do the job? And at their position. But when you're the sixth outside linebacker on the roster, like Levin Bell is probably going to be, you don't make it because you're playing well on defense. You make it because you are an asset on special teams. And that's the important part. You've got to put in the effort there. You got to be noticed there. And yeah, if you can do things at your position too, that helps a lot. But special teams matter when you're the back end of the road. If you're looking at being the 52nd or 53rd guy on the roster, you better be able to make a big impact on special teams.
Absolutely. Okay. So I wanted to pose the question, like, what's going on with Ken Walker? Kenny McIntosh is making some progress.
Ken Walker is back.
But he's back. He's going through individual drills, but group drills.
Got his helmet on, doing walkthrough stuff.
Right.
But
we're unlikely to see him in the preseason from all accounts.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a groin injury. Ken Walker isn't battling for a job or anything like that. They would need him healthy. And so they'll keep him out and just let him do those things. He'll be in shape. He'll be ready to roll, but they don't need him out there getting hit and that kind of stuff. They just need him healthy. They need him 100%. And so that's really what they're leaning into.
Let's talk nose tackle, or the defensive tackle position. Mike Morris and Cameron Young both out. Morris has a shoulder, Cameron Young has a calf strain. They've been battling injuries now for a little while. It seems like as we get deeper and deeper into camp and transitioning into the regular season, the Seahawks could potentially expect to explore adding veteran depth to that spot.
Yeah, possibly.
It's hard to go into the season with Jaron Reed and then big question marks after that.
Well, definitely. I mean, you've got you look at that. Morris was a rotational guy, a backup. He's not in the starter realm. I don't think that is like, it's not ideal that he would miss time or anything like that, because they really have high hopes for him and they think he can be really good. And he's shown some really nice things. And so
you want a backup for Mario Edwards. I mean, you can't just have Mario Edwards out.
Yeah. And so they need a body.
Well, they did bring in Gotel, to come in and kind of hold down the fort for a minute.
But he's not someone who's going to factor in the season. And at the nose tackle, I mean, you want Cameron Young is available as much as possible because you've got Jaron Reed, but they drafted Young to be that guy long term, and they need him to develop this year. And also, Reed's not playing more than 65% of the snaps at nose tackle. Nobody does, especially not on a Pete Carroll team. Like the defensive lineman, like 65 is about the maximum you ever see. So they need Young there. But honestly, we saw Sykes play really well in the first preseason game, and if Cameron Young's going to miss some time, we may see more Sykes as the guy, as the backup nose tackle. And if that ends up progressing through and becoming a thing, then it does. And we'll see. But overall, like it's it's they do need some. They've been so thin at those positions from the very beginning, and we knew that. That was why nose tackle was one of the big weakness spots on the defense that you and I talked about a lot. Is because when Jerron Reed was signed, he was listed as a defensive end. They talked about him at 3 tech. They thought he was going to be the starter there. Then they signed Mario Edwards to hold that down, and they've moved Jerron Reed into nose tackle. But there's not, I mean, that position, those two spots, the nose tackle and the 3, they're not the deepest spots on the roster by it. And
it seems like it's the weakest.
Yeah. And they need those positions to hold up because that's so important to this defense. And we saw last year what happened when they didn't hold up. And so getting those guys healthy and ready to roll is going to be important. And having depth behind them in case somebody does get hurt is going to be important. So we'll see what happens there. I still think those are the positions. If they're going to trade for someone during the cut down process or sign a veteran that is more of a salary cap casualty where they lose a job to a rookie, and so the team decides not to carry them in their elevated salary, like that's the position where it's.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a little disappointing. If there's one thing, and John has done a great job this offseason building this roster, constructing it, and so forth. The last 2 seasons, specifically, but if there's one spot that's really frustrating, it's this spot because it was poor last year. They finished 26th in the NFL in run defense. And then to basically run this thing back again. I mean, Jerron Reed might be slightly better than Poona Ford at that spot. And Shelby Harris, Mario Edwards, you swapping those guys out potentially, but they really didn't aggressively solve that problem this offseason. And they had
I don't know if I would agree with that. You're coming in.
I mean, Dre Jones was added, yes.
Yeah, but you look at the not just the starters, but the starters and the depth on the defensive line. Who's returning from last year?
Right.
Miles Adams.
Right.
Everyone else has been replaced. Everyone else has been replaced.
Yeah, that is true, but we still have
So they're not running anything back. But
the depth though is the biggest concern.
Yeah, but they were out of cap space, right? They used it on Dre Jones, and they were able to get Mario Edwards in and Jerron Reed. So they have 3 new veteran starters. They knew they needed to do that. They needed to find backups, and so that's where you get Mike Morrison and Cameron Young and that kind of stuff. They agreed they still need more guys. But in one off season, when you don't have a lot of cap space to work with, they were intent on improving the first line, right? And they did that, and we're hoping to draft backups, and they've done that, but not enough. And they've got to play this out. I mean, they were limited in what they could do, and they did a lot. So I'm less critical of it, because I think that they've done a good job of taking what was by far the weakest spot on this roster and just completely revamping it and starting over. I don't have a problem.
So the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is not any one player, but an entire group. And I'm saving this up for you, buddy. The Seattle offensive line starting 5 seems to be set at this point. Charles Cross at left tackle. I understand he's more fit and in better shape this year, and looks to improve. Left guard Damian Lewis, center Evan Brown, who we picked up in free agency from Detroit. Right guard Phil Haynes, and right tackle Abe Lucas over on the right. It looks like Anthony Bradford has not yet played himself into a competition.
No, he's been
at
pretty major disappointment in camp this year. So,
and then
in fact,
Oluwatimi has had a little elbow injury that's kept him out of team drills all week until yesterday.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of fallen behind a little bit. And Evan Brown, quite frankly, has beat him so far.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I think Oluwatimi didn't set himself in front. And at this point, they're going to go with the vet because of the importance of all the mental aspects of the game. I still think that Oluwatimi ends up as a starter before the season's over. I just have a hard time believing that they're going to go with, kind of the journeyman vet on a 1-year deal over the rookie, the very promising rookie, who just needs playing time and needs to become a vet. I think at some point that transition is made. I'm more interested and concerned about the guard spots because Lewis is on the final year of his deal. Phil Haynes is on a 1-year deal. They drafted Bradford thinking that he would be the answer there, and he has simply not developed. And I know a lot of that has to do with the zone blocking scheme and just all the different reads and the mental part and that. It's hard. It takes a lot of learning to do it and do it right. I expect he'll get there, but he just hasn't clicked for him. He hasn't picked it up quickly. And that's kind of frustrating. But to the point where Jake Curran, the backup right tackle, has been getting significant run at right guard again. Which
he seems to be the swing guard on this team at this point.
Well, he's right.
I guess yes.
He's right tackle and guard.
Yeah.
What would happen is if Lewis got hurt at this point, Curran would come in at right guard and they'd shift Haynes over. They wouldn't put Curran at left guard. So,
mixed.
But yeah, and then Forsyth is more of a swing tackle where he can do both. And you're also going to have Oluwatimi active, and so if they had to, they would bring him in and shift Evan Brown to guard. Like there's lots of different things that they can do. But that's actually one of the nice things about the way that they've developed this is they've got a lot of guys that are versatile. Curran, Forsyth, Evan Brown. These are guys that can play multiple positions.
And I think that's why they carry 9 guys this year instead of 10. Gives them an opportunity to carry that 6th wide receiver or an extra running back.
I would agree. I think that when you got that kind of versatility, it matters. The other thing is that on game day, when you don't have 53 available, you've got 45 or 46 available. You need guys that can play multiple positions, that can back up multiple positions, because you can't keep all of your backups active. That's too many guys that sit on the sidelines and don't do anything for you unless there's an injury. And so, you're going to see the value of that versatility this year. So,
I don't even see right now Anthony Bradford suiting up. Now, he'll make the 53. There's no doubt.
I would agree with that. But at this point,
he might not make 53 on game day.
Yeah, he's not going to make the 46.
46.
He'll be there, but I see him as a healthy scratch, unless something changes. Right? There's other injuries, or something suddenly clicks as far as his responsibilities, and the team feels they can trust him more. He's going to be a healthy scratch for most of this year.
Yeah, interesting.
It's so disappointing coming in. We had such high hopes for him.
Yeah, right. I think we always knew that Oluwatimi might have the edge at starting just because of his experience. I think Anthony Bradford wasn't as experienced, and I think that's showing up a little bit right now. And he's a scheme-specific guy, bigger guy. Needs to definitely play on the right side. They've got him kind of filling in on the left side as well. I'm not sure.
I think he can play either, at the guard spot. It's just a matter of why did they move him to left? They brought him in to be the long-term solution at right guard, but then partway through camp, they moved him over to the left side. And I asked, why? Why would they do that? And is it comfort? Is it, what would be the point of that? I think what it had to do is just finding more reps for him. because they need to get Curhan ready to be the backup on the right. They don't really have a backup on the left. And so they moved him over there so he can get reps with the twos.
And the diversity
on every day.
In this game is important too. Going forward, especially if he's not going to be a starter right out of the gate, you're going to get this guy ready to play wherever he needs to play. Yeah, interesting. Anything else you want to talk about before this game? I want to see Geno Smith.
I do too. I don't necessarily know if I agree with you in terms of how much Geno's going to play, or if Geno's going to play. Last year was different because it was a competition. Like, he was fighting for a job.
I'm only thinking in terms of, Russell Wilson played in the preseason. Not a lot, but he did play.
Yeah, but this was also when there were 4 games, and the theory on how you use your preseason games shifted drastically a couple of years ago. And I could see him not playing at all, not taking a snap in the preseason. A lot of teams did that with their starters last year. And Geno's entrenched. It's his job. There's no competition here. So I could see him not playing at all. But at the same time, you could be right. Like, they could bring him in and be like, okay, let's make sure he's sharp. But if DK and Lockett aren't playing, why would you bother with Geno? You know what I mean? Like, just then you're getting sharp with a bunch of backups. Like, that doesn't matter. You might as well hold on.
That's why I see most of the starters playing 1 or 2 series. That's just me. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I see that is, you're going to get your offensive line out there, your starting 5, all your starters, just to kind of go through a rehearsal just a little bit and then get them out.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see. I'm hoping that the starters play in this particular game because I'm going to be there, and I'd much rather watch a series or 2 with Geno Smith and company than an extra series or 2 with Holton Allers.
Yeah.
Right. So
good luck getting there. Make sure you leave plenty early, and good luck getting a parking spot within a half a mile of the stadium. And
I've already got
to pay like $85 or $90 for that spot.
I've already got a spot.
Nice.
Like, I pre-purchased a spot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, don't tell anybody.
No, I mean, that's
where it's at.
That's the thing.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy down there.
It is. It's insane. But more and more,
easy, Keith. When the Kingdom was up back in the day, we used to park.
Parking lot was huge.
Well, but we used to just park for free down the street next to the railroad tracks, and close to the viaduct. There was tons of parking around everywhere, and you just you'd walk to the stadium. That was part of the fun. You passed all the peanut vendors, and everyone was yelling, hip and hollering. And now it's so confined. There's no spots close.
Yep.
Everything, you can literally park 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. And if you're, older guy or with young kids going to the game, that can be problematic, and so you're depending on Ubers and Lyfts and so forth. And those are problematic to get out of the game, in a timely manner. It's just kind of it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, you're talking about the Kingdom, like, think about where the Mariners play, and the entire, I guess it's now T-Mobile, that was parking lot.
Yeah, and everything, and where Lumen Field is, everything north of that. Now there's building. They built a couple of tall residential towers right there where the parking lot used to be. The north, because the north lot was huge. I mean, it had close to 10,000 parking spots.
So parking was nothing back then, but now it is a big deal. But more and more of the lots that are close have gone to repurchase tickets, so you don't have to fight and try and find a spot. You just buy your spot, you come in, you park, you're done.
Just out of curiosity, how much did that cost?
$60.
And how close are you?
Across the street.
That's
essentially. I wanted to.
Last time I went, I was half a mile.
Yeah.
With my dad, and my dad.
That's
a mile away. long walk, half mile away, and it was like $75. It was just it's crazy.
Yep. The spot that I would usually park when I would go up with friends was 40, and yeah, it was three-quarters of a mile away. And it had to be open. Like there's no guarantee there was going to be spots. You got there early enough to make sure that it was there, and went ahead and did that. But in the past, when I've done it, I've always parked at in the Mariners parking garage, right back. It was Safeco then instead of T-Mobile. That's where I would park, and that made for just a really easy. You just drive up, you park, you're in the garage, there's security, so you don't have to worry about your stuff being stolen. After the game, you go over, it's hard to get out of the garage. But if you go out the backside rather than on the road between the stadiums, if you go out on Occidental on the other side, you just can escape away from the stadiums down into the SoDo area towards West Seattle and get on the freeway down there. It actually makes for a pretty smooth and easy way to do it, but there weren't spots available because we originally had plans. My folks live in Kitsap County, and so we're going to go crash at their place. And the original plan was to park in Bremerton, walk onto the ferry, walk down to the stadium, and do that. But we realized that with the 7:00 game, it being 10:00, I've got my two little kids with me. Well, one of them's not little anymore.
There's only one ferry after that time, right?
Yeah, it's 11:20. So you have an hour and 20 minutes to get the 2.5 miles or whatever it is up to the ferry, which is easy to do. And because you're a walk-on, you're guaranteed a spot. So that's not a big deal. But it's going to be late. The kids are, especially my youngest, is going to be dragging by then because the game starts,
right?
Relatively close to bedtime type of thing. And so just decided kind of at the last second to not bother. And so we're going to drive on, park, and then drive around on the way back. So we were kind of scrambling for a parking spot with a change.
I'm envious. Even after all this talk about the issues and troubles of parking, I'm envious of you. I hope you have a great time. I do expect a firsthand account back in the show when we record the recap show, how things went for sure.
I will tell you, if you're looking for me in the pictures of the stadium, I'll be one of the 8 million people in the throwback jerseys.
Nice.
That went on sale a couple weeks ago. I've got my Largent jersey in hand, ready to roll, and I'll be wearing that. And
sweet.
So,
sweet. What part of the stadium are you in?
I don't even remember. These were gifts. This is my Father's Day present. So, nice. Take the family to a game. So, awesome. I don't even remember where they are. I don't care at this point. I'm going to a game. I'm taking my kids. It'll be my kids' first Seahawks game, which is why we're going.
Wow. Nice.
Why we're going preseason instead of.
I did the same thing.
Yep. That's
mine first game.
Yep. Because if my youngest decides to tap out early and he's a mess, and I'm like, okay, we just got to get. What am I missing? I'm missing, third and fourth stringers play against third and fourth stringers when it doesn't matter. I don't think I'll have to do that because he's pretty good about these kind of things. But
and if it was a gift, you don't have to worry about paying full price for a preseason game, which I also have issues with as well.
Which we didn't.
Yeah, perfect.
I don't even know
the perfect scenario.
I don't even know how it worked out, but it wasn't even.
The only thing easier could be, if you rented a helicopter and you got the special forces to help you rappel down to the field, that would be the best way to enter that stadium.
Do you really think that my my high anxiety youngest would rappel?
Well, that's yeah.
I've done it.
Probably.
I've done it.
Rappel out of a helicopter or down a mountainside?
Down a mountainside.
Yeah.
Which I got to tell you, now we're way into the weeds here in this show. This show should have ended 10 minutes ago. For me, rappelling was awesome, but that moment of leaning out over the cliff, just to get started. Once you're on the way down and you're in that position,
it's It's the same thing.
It's awesome.
Letting go on a zip line. Like I did this zip line tour in Mexico out of Puerto Vallarta once in the Sierra Madre mountains, and it was over this canyon, over this river, and the furthest drop on the highest zip line was 600 feet above this river, in between these two trees. And the line itself was tied around the trees, and the trees were kind of leaning a little bit into the canyon, and kind of you could see the rocks around some of the roots. And I don't know if there's regulations for that particular situation, but yeah, that was a thrill. It was a thrill. I'd do it again, but yeah, interesting. Same sort of sensation though. You just let go. You just kind of have to. You just kind of lean out and do your thing. But like I said, once you're going, like when you're rappelling, once you're out there and you're in that position where your feet on the wall and you're going down and you've got control of everything, it's exhilarating and it's fun and it doesn't feel dangerous. Yeah.
But that moment,
Bear Grylls Myers. All right.
Nope. Don't give me that. I have no desire to ever drink urine. So that's
that Bear Grylls. The reason that Bear Grylls ended up getting so famous, A, he's kind of a cool dude, but B, he fell out of he didn't fall. He jumped out of an airplane when he was in the Special Forces for Great Britain, and his parachute partially open, didn't open. At 16,000 feet, he jumped out. Parachute didn't open. He thought he could get it corrected, so he didn't cut it loose and go to his second shoot. It ended up not working. He literally fell to the ground, completely to the ground, with his parachute not open, and lived.
Damn.
That's Bear Grylls. That's the backstory. That's crazy to me.
And the lesson of that story is, don't try and correct it. You've got a backup shoot for a reason. Damn it.
Right? Or just don't jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
There's that. There is that. Yeah.
We all pick our things. You know, that's a thing for people. I had a brother-in-law that used to jump out of airplanes like that, and it didn't work out for one of their other people that participated in that activity at this particular jump facility, and he never went back up again. So
good for him to recognize the thing. Yeah, everyone's got a thing. Mine used to be mountains. I've been up, other than Rainier, I've been up every peak in Washington. So
nice. Wow.
That was my thing for a while, and
my thing is drinking margaritas next to the pool.
Well, there's
not quite as hazardous, but yet there's some pleasure in that.
There's a lot of pleasure in that, especially if you're using good tequila.
Yeah, I like to keep my feet on the ground these days. Yeah.
Yep.
But I get it though. I get it. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show's at Seahawks Playbook Podcast on any podcast platform that you can find, and also YouTube. We're on our YouTube channel. You can find us at Seahawks Playbook Podcast on there, and hit the subscribe button. Send us out, share it to your favorite friends and family if you like it. Leave a nice little review if you want, and please subscribe. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.